Hi everyone, welcome to this Mindvalley Masterclass. So we're actually filming this in beautiful Cabo, Mexico, and I'm here at an event called the Transformational Leadership Council. The TLC, for short, is an event that brings together many of the world's top speakers and healers and authors and business coaches. These are guys whose books you see in bookstores all around the world. At this very same event, I was sitting in the audience and I saw this man. His name was Edmeades, and he's our guest today. He was being honored with an award called the Distinguished Leadership Award. It was my first time hearing of Eric, and so I was wondering, who is this guy? Why is he getting that award? And then, as he was presented his award, one by one, people were coming on stage, members of this elite group of writers and authors. A lot of them are celebrities and famous people. They were talking about how this man, Eric, had helped them reshape their bodies. People who were unable to lose weight were certainly shedding those pounds. One lady had lost 40 pounds. Another man said he'd been trying for years to get in shape, decades. And with Eric, he was able to shed 15 pounds and have a body that he was so proud of. And then Eric, when he got on stage, he thanked everyone and he said he was going to run this particular weight loss approach once again for new members of the group. I was one of those new members, so I instantly signed up. Now that was January 2016. The program started on March 15, 2016. And I want to show you what happened to my body. So in a moment, I'm going to put up a really personal picture. But before I show you the picture, just a little bit of a backstory, right? So I had just turned 40 in 2016. And I'd made a promise to myself when I turned 40 that I was going to be in the best shape of my life. Well, I turned 40 and I completely failed. It was the stress of having a new book out, of running a growing company as a CEO and having a 2-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son and juggling all of those different things, work, career, parenthood. And so I hit my 40th birthday with a dad bod. I wasn't proud of it, but I certainly wasn't, feeling okay about, say, taking off my shirt at the pool in public. So I had an okay body, 22% body fat, and this is what it looked like. Now check out what happened after Wilfit, after I joined Eric's program. In 90 days, this was my new body. You can see that dramatic effect, and it was also measurable. I went from 22% body fat to 15% body fat, which is perfect for a man. But here's what else happened. I thought it was just about looking better and feeling better, but firstly, it gave me so much more confidence in who I am. If you look at videos of me now and 1 year ago, you'll see that marked difference. It gave me new levels of energy. I could be a CEO of a company with over 100 employees and work 10 hours straight and never feel tired. I couldn't do that before. It helped me give up bad habits. I actually went for 2 months without a cup of coffee. Now, you know me, you cannot separate Vishen Lakhiani from his cup of coffee. And I went 2 months without it, and it was my choice. My alcohol consumption went down by 70%. You would not believe how much I saved from not buying as many bottles of French wine as I normally do. So all of these changes came together, and I gotta say, it was one of the most amazing things I did. And so after the program, I spoke to its creator, Eric Edmeades, and I said, dude, I have got to bring this to the Mindvalley audience. So here we are today. And I'm so excited to get a glimpse of Eric Edmeades and some of his mind-blowing ideas in changing the health and the weight and the shape of your body in a really interesting, unusual, and fascinating way. Okay, so before I bring on Eric, a couple of things. I don't know how you found this masterclass, but I know why you're probably here. But you're here because you're probably looking to make a dramatic shift in your body shape, your energy levels. You're probably here because you've tried other forms of dieting or exercise and haven't gotten the results you always wanted. Now that was true for me as well. For the last decade, I've been experimenting with different exercise programs, from P90X to Les Mills. I've been experimenting with diets, And they were all good, and I have no regrets. Many of these dieting programs helped me take on good habits, better habits of eating, but they did not reshape my body. For those of you who are here because you want practical takeaways that you can go back with in the next hour or so and instantly apply in your life, Eric is going to share 5 ideas, 5 powerful ideas that you can bring in your life immediately that will shift your relationship with food and make a profound impact on your body and being. So with that, let's bring on Eric Edmeades. Welcome to the masterclass.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so I've already told people what a phenomenal genius you are, how charismatic you are, how much you know. So basically, don't mess this up.
Okay, I'll do what I can.
So Eric, I'm sure the first thing people are wondering is the Wilfit story. How did you discover Wilfit?
You know, it's a journey. It wasn't something, you know, these days people often look at it and go, wow, you just had this like, you know, sort of lucky overnight success or something, but it wasn't like that. When I was a kid, I was sick, like and it's funny when you're sick like that, you don't know you're sick. You know, like I think I heard you using an example once in those decongestion commercials where people like, the fog lifted, only I didn't even know there was a fog. And that's what my life was like. I had really serious allergies, throat infections, debilitating stomach cramps. I couldn't breathe through my own sinuses for something like, I want to say, you know, 8 years or something like that. And I'd gone obviously to go visit with doctors and check out all kinds of, like, you know, take these pills, take these things, and frankly, nothing worked. I mean, look, when I say nothing worked, maybe that's not totally fair. Sometimes they give me some kind of like cortisone spray that I could shove up my sinuses, and then for an hour I'd be able to breathe. But I don't really call that working, you know?
Right.
That's just dealing with the symptoms. And then I got talking with a friend of mine one day after my doctor recommended surgery, and my friend said, "Look, you need to make some changes. You know, you got to look at your food." I go, "What do you mean, look at my food?" He says, "Just consider this." And I made a couple of little changes. I mean, things that I look at now is not even particularly dramatic. I mean, maybe then I thought they're dramatic, but and I made a couple of changes, and then over the next 30 days, I would drop about 35 pounds or 15 kilos. But that's not really the story, right? I mean,
you lost 35 pounds in 30 days.
Yeah. And it was like, I know that's a big deal, but in a weird way, it's not a big deal. Because it's not a big deal relative to breathing through your own sinuses for the first time in a decade. Wow. You know, I still now remember the morning I woke up and I went, and my eyes watered in pain because air had not been into my sinus passages for so long that it hurt a little bit. It hurt in the nicest way. Like, the weight loss was great and all, but, you know, and my acne, like I had really terrible cystic acne, painful, like turning my neck hurt because I get all these cysts in my neck. 2 weeks in to making these changes, I noticed I had no new acne. I only had the old pox, you know, nothing new.
Right.
And 2 weeks later, I had nothing. I mean, I had some scars that stuck around. I'll keep those for character's sake, but it was gone. And then the other thing, like I had these stomach cramps that were so terrible. In fact, my mom's last name is Dutois, and they refer to them in the family as the Dutois cramps, you know, because like that's what we get, right? And I stopped getting them. Only here's the weird thing, right? Sometimes when we stop having a symptom, we forget that we ever had it. And it was about 6 weeks after I made these shifts, I went over to a friend's house, and this friend made this really nice dinner and served this really nice dessert, and I wanted to be polite. I didn't want to be that guy, and I ate the dessert. And it was a dessert that violated everything that all the changes I tried to make over the last month, and I ended up with such unbelievable pains in my stomach that it really woke me up to the connection between food and health.
And that's amazing, because a lot of people think it's just about the weight loss. But what I found, and I went into this purely just for the weight loss, but what I found is skin cleared up. People started asking me, did you go see a dermatologist? Energy levels went up. There were so many changes beyond the weight loss.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the most interesting thing is my kids, and I love my kids, but my kids would bring back all of these diseases from school. And every 3 months, at least once, I'd be stricken with a flu, because my kids, they jump on me at night, they crawl into my bed, and then they cough and sneeze directly in my face, right? Hayden, I know you do that. And after this, the kids continued those annoying but lovable habits, but I stopped getting sick.
Yeah, I mean, I used to get sick. Maybe once or twice a year I'd get a cold or a flu or something like that, 10 years ago. And it is rare ever that I get sick at all now. And it's something that until it goes away, you don't really recognize it was happening.
Very true. So first key idea, folks, first key idea, diet doesn't just influence your body shape. It does so much more, and I want you to remember that.
So in any event, with all this health recovery that I'd been through, I started developing this sense of curiosity. Like, how is it possible that I'd gone to visit doctors for like 10 years and had prescription pills and injections and treatments and creams and inhalers and all these things, and nothing worked, and yet changing my diet did. And that really made me curious. And remember, back then, there was no Google. You couldn't just walk up and ask your question of the internet, right? Like, it was a question that was so pervasively inside me, and yet no venue showed up for me to be able to answer it. And I remember one day I was sitting down with with an uncle of mine, and he was an orthopedic surgeon, and I asked him, I was really curious. I said, hey, look, to become a surgeon, you went to medical school for a really long time. How much of that time did you spend studying food? How much of your medical... And this is the bizarrest thing. He cocked his head to one side and he goes, I don't recall any. And that, frankly, blew me away. I mean, he went to medical school for 8 years, and they didn't study food? What was amazing to me is not just that, but that in that instant, he got how wrong that was. But it hadn't occurred to him before. I was in Munich, speaking for 1,000 business people all about Wilfit, and I started talking about doctors, and I asked if there were any doctors in the house, and there was one guy in the third row, and I asked him, I said, well, how long did you go to medical school? He was a general practitioner, so he'd been, I think, 6 years in medical school, and I asked him, how much education did you get about food? And with a microphone in his hand, cameras rolling, 1,000 people watching, he said it. None at all. Now, that really amplified my curiosity. That really got me going, what you're saying, that the practitioners that are primarily responsible for our health are not studying food. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And right about at that time that I'm having that realization and I've got this real curiosity burning inside me, two really powerful things happen. One, that I find out that my great-grandfather was a famous zoologist and archaeologist that discovered the oldest Homo sapiens skull, Homo sapiens archaic skull in the history of Earth, a 259,000-year-old ancestor of us. And so
Who was that? Who was your grandfather?
T.F. Dreyer. And he's discovered the Florisbad skull. And I suddenly became really fascinated with Middle Stone Age Southern African history, just studying everything I could about what life was like back then. Now, I didn't know this was going to have anything to do with the answer to my other question, right? But then something else happened. And I think it's the kind of thing that can only happen when you've got this like overarching question burning in your soul and no way of answering it. And so I'm on a plane flying to Africa to do some wildlife photography. And on the plane, I'm reading an article, and the article is all about how they put elephants in zoos and circuses and stuff like that, and they used to only live like maybe 7 or 10 years, and nobody knew that they were supposed to live longer. Like in nature, an elephant will live 7 years, but 100 years ago they didn't know that. Look, a little dog lives 15 years, a Great Dane lives 7 years, so maybe an elephant's only supposed to live 7 years, and so. Then one day they found out that elephants actually live 70 years in nature. And so all of a sudden the zoo and the circus owners, they became really worried about their investments, right? I mean, I'd like to say they were worried about the elephants, and I'm sure many of them were, but let's be clear, if you have this asset that income produces for only 7 years, and now suddenly there might be a way to get it to income produce for 70 years, you're gonna want to unlock the mystery to that. And this article was all about how they then began to observe the difference between an elephant in captivity and an elephant in the wild. Now here's where the article got me. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to grammar. I really like words and the preciseness of them and the order they're supposed to be in. I like that. And as I'm reading this article, the author, he starts referring to the elephants being in the zoo being on their captive diet and the elephants living in the wild being on their wild diet. And I thought to myself right away, that's grammatically incorrect. It's not their wild diet. I wanted to get a red pen out and circle it and say, excuse me, that's not their wild diet, that is their diet. That is their diet. There's their captive diet, and then they have a diet. That is their diet. Like, it suddenly got really clear to me. The article, the grammar wasn't right. It's their captive diet, their wild diet. No, it's the elephant diet. So then I started thinking about the word diet, and a couple things occurred to me. One was that humans are the only species on Earth that go on a diet. Every other species has a diet. You know, the leaf cutter ant has a diet, and it will surprise you to know that it's not leaves. And a cheetah has a diet, and of course an elephant has a diet. And that got me thinking a lot. And it got me thinking about what the word diet really meant. And it's funny because the original Greek and Latin translations, the original meaning of the word diet meant way of life. It did not mean temporary alteration to your eating pattern so you can fit into that bikini for the summer. I know not everybody wants to fit in a bikini, but you understand the point. So in making that observation, I suddenly started asking myself a different question. That is, well, if every species on Earth has a diet, don't we? And that's when my entire life changed. At that point, my life became a quest to find out what the truth was about us. And it became a quest of undoing what the food marketing industry has done to us around manipulating what we perceive to be our diet and the truth about what our diet is. And of course, you know, since then I've studied this intensely. And what I want to suggest is that there's a really cool observation to be made here, and that is that the species that we regard to be the most intelligent on Earth, right here, human beings, Homo sapiens, is also the species which suffers the most disease, suffers the most symptoms, suffers the most tragic, slow deaths. I mean, we are supposed to be the most intelligent species on Earth, and we suffer with more illness and sickness than any other species. Oh, by the way, we're followed very closely by our pets and by our zoo animals and the other animals that we influence, because of course, if we are feeding them, they're getting sick. And we are now on a captive diet, and that was really the...
I've never thought about that before, but that is eerily true.
It is.
So what happened next?
Well, at this point, now that I had a starting point, because that's what it really gave me, that my question had been not answered, but it was like walking along and there being a big, you know, you feel like you're lost in the forest, and then suddenly you see like a blaze in the tree that you cut, and you go, oh my God, I'm on track again. And so at that point, I just started studying everything I could about anthropology and archaeology. I even enrolled in an archaeology program at the University of Bristol in England. And after 6 months of that, I found the pace of learning. I mean, I'm just not a university guy. I really wanted to take charge of my education in this area. And I went so far as to go live with Bushmen in Africa on a number of occasions. In fact, I'm going to do that again in like about 3 weeks. And I did all that for us to get a really clear view of the way it used to be, and to begin to notice that almost every health problem that we have these days comes up because our life is different than our instincts and our biology. Our current society, our current version of the human lifestyle is contrary to our instincts and our physiology. And if we can begin to correct some of those things, we can create massive health turnaround. A lot of people at this point in time have arrived at a place where they've tried to make changes to their health or their body or what have you, and frankly, a lot of people have just given up. A lot of people have just simply given up. So I kind of want to show some pictures. These are actually, each one of these are people that I know very personally, and I'm really honored to be able to show you these pictures. The first one is Sabine. And Sabine lives in Stockholm, and she's a phenomenal healer, like just an incredible woman who has almost like a magic touch for healing people and helping people with fertility and helping people with their health. Only, like many great healers, she was struggling with her own health. And of course, she then came along and did our Wilfit challenge. And the pictures you're looking at, I want you to know, these are not a year apart. These pictures are 3 months apart. And it's really important for you to know, because I think there's a pervasive myth out there that exercise is a good strategy for weight loss or for health or what have you. It absolutely is not. Exercise is a way of enhancing health, but exercise is not a way of creating health where it does not exist. And so this change you're seeing in Sabine, that change was without exercise of any kind. And I think that's a very important distinction. In fact, here's another one without exercise. Take a look at Kurt. So these pictures also 90 days apart, 90 days apart. And Kurt is actually a business client of mine. So I'd been doing some consulting with him in the business world. And then one day he said, hey, I really want to turn my health around. And his story is really phenomenal, because not only did he lose all this weight, but how about this? He and his wife had been trying to get pregnant for about 9 years. They had some kids, and then they'd been trying to have another one. And for 9 years, they weren't able to. They'd had a number of difficulties. They'd tried fertility treatments and all that kind of stuff, and it just wasn't happening for them. And then in 90 days, he created the change you're seeing in this picture, in his body. And then one day his wife calls him, and she says, and they're from Estonia. And she says, he tells me this story in an Estonian accent. You'll have to excuse me for my botching the Estonian accent. But he calls me and he goes, Eric, he says, wife call me. She tell me she pregnant. And then he says, but wife tell me, it's Eric fault. And then he goes, but I check Eric's schedule, not Eric's fault. He's not in Stockholm, you know, where they were at that time. And, you know, so it was very cute and all, but we're talking about a change that really had a massive impact. And, you know, I got to tell you, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with fertility. And I'm going to tell you right now that a massive, massive reason that people are struggling with this is because the food industry is messing us up. And in a weird way, our genes are trying to prevent it from getting passed on. We are eating things that are dysfunctional, and it's making it harder and harder and harder for us as a species to conceive. I was reading a study about 5 years ago that said that the average man, based on sperm count levels dropping, the average man will not be able to conceive, will not be able to impregnate a woman by 2050 without medical intervention. I mean, one of the things that happens is when people are living a lifestyle that their genes are going, well, this is a lifestyle we shouldn't pass on, and sex drive starts to fall.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we get reported from our clients very much, as well as increased fertility, is increased reproductive desire. They just become more virile. We've had really interesting situations with women where their menstrual cycles completely normalized, where they've had problems with them for years. We've even had women that were in that early stage of menopause, and it reversed. So there's a really big impact. Yeah, there's a really big impact on the entire reproductive system.
Now, tell us about this picture of our mutual friend, Paul Sheely.
Well, that's a really important one. So Paul is a very, very good friend. Paul and Libby, Libby's his wife. And Paul is a genius. He's just truly brilliant. And he ended up coming and doing the Wilfit Challenge with us. And then one day his team sent him a landing page for a webinar that he was going to be hosting. And he looked at the picture on the webinar page, and he didn't recognize the guy because it wasn't the same guy that he looked in the mirror and saw that morning. Wow. And so he took out his phone and he put the picture of the webinar picture, and he took out his phone and he took that picture, and that's the one you're looking at, and he sent that to me. And again, that changes 90 days. 90 days, not about exercise, about changing his relationship with food. And his wife had very, very similar results. They're both fanatical fans now today, I'm honored to say.
And what's so incredible about this is, if you think about Paul Sheely is the creator of photo reading. We have featured him on Mindvalley. He's the founder of Learning Strategies, a great education company. Yet he had not been trained in how to eat.
Yeah.
And when he had that revelation, it completely transformed him, as you can see in this picture.
I would add one thing. It's not that he hadn't been trained in how to eat. I would say that we've all been trained in how to eat, but we've been trained by food manufacturers.
Right.
That's the distinction. We've been trained that apple pie is American. Okay, apples come from Kazakhstan. How could apple pie, you know, I'm kind of joking around a little bit, but we've been trained that chocolate is for Easter. We've been trained that sweet things are for dessert. We've been trained that we should have a balanced meal that has, all the different food groups represented. And frankly, that's a whole debate among the food manufacturers saying, what percentage of the plate should we get in our marketing campaign?
And while the food manufacturers want you to buy their junk, what you'll also notice is that in America especially, there's this culture of late night infomercials on exercise. Now, exercise serves a great purpose.
Yes.
Exercise is wonderful, do it. But scientists are now saying that 95% of your body weight is because of what you eat. It's 5% influenced by exercise.
That's right.
All my shifts on Wilfit, no exercise. Sabine, whom you mentioned, no exercise. Kurt, no exercise. I mean, we did regular stuff, like I didn't shift my exercise up or down in any way, but all my shifts came from what you eat. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? There is a danger in that exercise myth, because older folks think that the only way to lose weight is to exercise. I know guys, men and women in their 50s and 60s and 70s who are not in good shape, and they think that the only way to get there is to jog a certain amount or go to the gym, but they can't do it because they have a back injury or a knee injury, and they've bought into this myth. And when they realize that they can dramatically reshape their bodies with Wilfit, it's so miraculous to see what it does for them. So here's why I'm so passionate about this, right? I've seen this with my own mother. So, Mom, if you're watching, I'm going to be telling them a story about you. This does not give you an excuse to take teenage photos of me and put it up on Facebook, okay? So my mom doesn't exercise as much as she should. And so for the longest time, she was at a certain weight. And she's not a woman who can go to a gym and just work out, but that's what she thought she needed to do to lose weight. She was on Wilfit for 90 days. She was part of the second batch of Wilfit. I convinced her to go on. And in 90 days, she lost a grand total of 12 pounds. That was huge for her, because my mom is...
And she's not super tall.
No. She lost 12 pounds. She looks completely different.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to change her exercise. And that's something I want you to know. If you, like my mom, have a knee injury or back pain and you've been giving up on yourself, it's not about the exercise. The exercise is important, but it's 5%. It's about the food you put in your body. So at this point, let's do a quick recap. So these are the models of reality that I want you guys to take back thus far. First is 95% of your body shape is dependent on what you eat. 5% is on exercise. Modern science is now telling us that. Secondly, the natural diet does exist, but we get brainwashed to eat crap. And that's because food marketing is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
That's right.
Third, there are better ways than dieting to lose weight. Wilfit is rooted in psychology, gamification, behavioral change, but not necessarily traditional dieting. Fourth, there are more benefits than just looking good. Skin gets better, illnesses disappear, things such as the common flu vanish. Now, we can't guarantee any of this. Everybody's body is different. Everybody has their own relationship with food. And finally, dieting isn't difficult. As you will see from how Eric has structured this program and the tips he's about to give you, it's a lot easier than you think. So now, let's come to some tangible steps, tangible things that people can take away, the 5 key ideas that you're going to be sharing with us.
So the 5 key ideas that we want to share today are very foundational and important. And the first one, frankly, is beware of sugar. In fact, this brings up a whole issue. Sometimes when I mention that the food marketing industry is kind of doing this to us, then I get people commenting that maybe I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist and that sort of stuff. But I think it's really important to remember that just in the later part of 2016, the truth came out about sugar. Now, many truths had been coming out before that. In fact, even in the 60s, truths about sugar were coming out. In the 60s, there were a number of studies that were indicating that sugar might be a major influencer in the development of heart disease. Now, the sugar industry at this point, ever so intelligently, from a marketing perspective, got their lobbyist to hire 2 Harvard researchers. And what they did is they basically framed fat. They got them to do a research project that would blame fat for heart disease. And then that study got picked up and published in the New England Journal of Medicine, because back then you did not have to disclose your funders to get published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And once they were in the journal, their study became lore. And of course, the entire campaign at that point became about get rid of fat, because they'd framed fat, and now we were going to think fat was evil. And by the way, certain types of fat are evil, but they just framed fat every low fat this, low fat that. And so as a consequence, people took their eye off sugar. And while they took their eye off sugar, sugar robbed the bank. Like I'm saying, really, truly, in the 1970s, there were 2 types of diabetes back then, and they had different names. One was called adult onset diabetes, and it was typically something that would happen to people in their 40s. And then there was another kind of diabetes called child onset diabetes, which we now refer to as type 1 diabetes. The reason that we had to switch to type 1 and type 2 in terms of our common reference to these is that it stopped being only adults that were getting type 2. In fact, in the 70s, there was almost nobody under 40 years old that had type 2 diabetes. Today, there's something like 20 million young people with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetic condition, 20 million. And so if you think I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, it's the age-old thing. Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not planning against me. So the issue about being aware of sugar is really, really clear. Sugar is put in food for one main reason, and that is that it stimulates your appetite. That's it. It's put in there because it stimulates your appetite. They put it in there to make you eat more food. Think about this. If you're a food manufacturer and you want to increase your profitability, any marketing specialist is going to tell you a couple of ways you can increase your market penetration or increase your sales. One is get more customers, but another one is get your customers to buy more often, right? So if you put sugar in the food, then you're going to get the clients to buy more often. And so sugar is put in, you'd be amazed in the things it is. You can go buy some, beautiful, healthy looking tomato sauce at the store to make a nice, spaghetti or a pizza or something with, and you go look at the ingredients and you're going to find sugar shows up in the top 3 or 4 ingredients, sometimes as high as number 2. Now let me ask you, would you go home and make a homemade sauce, chop up some tomatoes, onions, garlic, and 2 tablespoons of sugar? No. But if your entire goal was to sell more, then maybe you would. Not only does it stimulate your appetite, but then on top of that, it's addictive, right? It's addictive. So now, your appetite is stimulated, I need more, But on top of that, your body starts to crave it at an addiction level, which is even more powerful than the hunger. So the first thing I want to leave you with is truly start today really being aware of sugar. Just paying attention. Just read the ingredients and look for sugar. Look for sugar and all the different names that it's hidden under. Because there's like 60 different names of sugar in the ingredients lists of all the foods you're eating. And I want you to pay attention to this. Now, I realize you may not be from the United States. I'm not. I'm Canadian. A lot of the statistics that we have these days are from America, and I'm going to give you one right now. Sometimes I share something with my wife, and she's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But when she hears it from somebody else, right? So one day I sat down with my wife, and I told her two things. I said, I had just been doing a bunch of research, and I'd stumbled a bit into some new information. This is maybe 5 years ago, about 5 years ago. And one of the things that I stumbled upon was that the average American was eating 154 pounds or 70 kilograms of sugar a year. Like figure that out. Like if you tried to take that on the airline, you'd be paying, I mean, that's a lot of sugar, right? 154 pounds, that's like you in sugar. So the average American is eating 154 pounds, and the real joke is that the average American doesn't even know they're eating it. Because I'm not talking about the chocolate bars and the soft drinks. I'm talking about the hidden sugars, because the most of it's secretly snuck in. I shared that with her, and then I shared another thing with her, and this blew me away. And that is being obese. And obese, by the way, is not what you see walking around the county fair in Minneapolis. I'm not talking about the morbid obesity that we're seeing now all over the world. I'm talking about my belly out to here. I don't know if you can, but like my belly out to there, that would be obese. Being obese like that is 7 times more lethal than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, right? And if you really want to try this out, here's what you do. Next time you're out in public, walk around and start to notice something. And what you'll notice is you occasionally see very old people smoking, but what you almost never see is very old people that are really obese because they don't make it to the finish line. Now, I shared this with my wife, and she's like, that can't be right. 154 pounds, that can't be right. That can't be right. And 7 times, if it was 7 times more dangerous than smoking, surely that would be on the headlines everywhere, right? So she doesn't totally buy what I'm saying, right? Then I'm doing an event where I have to go on stage right after President Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton's on the stage, I'm sitting in the 4th row looking up, and I'm going, wow, I have to follow this, which is quite an interesting experience. And somebody from the audience at the end asks him, what do you think the biggest threats to society are right now? And he says, he goes, well, right now it'd surprise you to know that the average American is eating 154 pounds of sugar a year. And when you combine that with the fact that obesity is 7 times more dangerous than smoking, we got a problem. And now my wife is going, did you hear that? That's incredible. And now she was willing to believe it. The second principle, or the kind of second really important message I have for you today is beware of chemicals. Now, this is an important distinction. Let's understand that the food industry is not interested in providing us with the most nutritious food possible to nourish our health. There are companies like that, but the vast majority of the food industry is primarily interested in their own profitability. Look, capitalism might be the best system we have right now, but it certainly has its weaknesses. And one of those things is that when a company is primarily profit-driven, then other things get sacrificed. And so when a company chooses to put chemicals into a food, they're really only doing it to boost profitability, not to improve food quality. Now, that in itself isn't a problem. But what is a problem is what those chemicals are doing to us. Like if you really think about it, your body has a requirement for certain things, right? You know, one of our principles, we've shared it, is you've got to get your nutritional needs met. That's an important thing. But then your body also has to get rid of the stuff that it doesn't know what to do with, right? So when you put garbage in, the body has to get that out somehow. You know, sometimes it pushes out through your skin. Sometimes it gives diarrhea. Sometimes it might, cause any number of ways that toxin is going to come out of your body at some stage. And these days, so many food manufacturers are using chemicals in our food in order to get the food to taste different, in order to get the food to last longer, in order to get the food to look different. And so we want to avoid chemicals in our food. And also I want to be clear that they hide them. They hide them. Like, okay, maybe you're already at the point, like many people, where if it says artificial flavorings, you're like, well, I'm just not doing that. Because let me describe what that means. Artificial flavoring means that a food manufacturer disappeared into some company, most of them are in the eastern United States that I know of, and they don't want you to know their name. They're in big buildings with no sign, and you go in and they walk into a white room, and then they say, what would you like to smell next? And they can go and get a jar and an eyedropper and dab it onto a perfume thing, and then you can smell whatever you want to smell. You want to smell McDonald's restaurant? They got it in a jar. You want to smell popcorn? They got that in a jar. You want to smell, apple? They have that in a jar, right? And so the question is, how did that smell get into the jar? And the sad thing is, it had nothing to do with an apple. It had nothing to do with an apple at all, other than that it coincidentally happens to taste a little bit like an apple. But that means, in the meantime, that you're ingesting a bunch of chemicals that obviously, look, we can agree about this minimally, that there's no nutritional value in that chemical, in that chemical composition. But isn't it also likely that it's bad for our bodies to be putting that in? That at a minimum, our body has to expend a bunch of energy to get it out, and at a maximum, maybe it's disruptive in some way. So artificial flavoring, okay, we can move past that, right? But here's the thing. If it says natural flavoring on it, what should you do? It's natural flavoring, right? Except for one problem. We are so affected by food lobbying at this stage. We are so affected that labeling regulations and the way ingredients are displayed and all that stuff is impacted by the food industry. They help decide the very rules that govern them. And so when it says natural flavoring, what it means is all the other chemical crap that we used to simulate the apple flavor before, and a tiny little bit of something that came out of an apple, and now it satisfies the standard for for natural flavoring. Do you understand? What it means is that it's still artificial flavoring. It's still fake. It's still some chemical compound that's designed to trick your nervous system into thinking that you ate an apple. And so we want to avoid chemicals. There are also preservatives, right? Preservatives that they're sticking into the food. Now, bear in mind, what's the preservative there to do? The preservative is there to stop the food from breaking down. Do you really want to put that in your digestive system? Do you really want to eat a food that's full of preservatives? Preservatives are a defense mechanism against being digested by bacteria and other things that might break it down. And then we're going to eat the food with all those preservatives? I'm thinking that might not be such a good idea. Also, in the realm of natural flavoring, remember that it's not that it even has to be it doesn't even necessarily need to be a bit of an apple. It just needs to come from a natural source. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that while it's unlikely that any of the vanilla you've eaten lately was made this way, for a very long time, and maybe even still in some places now, you can still buy it, vanilla was made from a substance that was excreted by a sac under the tail of a beaver. Do you understand what I'm saying here? I'm saying that somewhere along the line, I don't even want to think about how somebody discovered this. I don't want to, no, actually, I'm curious. I would like to know.
Who was the first person who tasted that beaver's secretion and went, oh, this tastes like vanilla?
Yeah, they had to first have the thought that licking the beaver's butt secretions would be a good idea to begin with. And then they noticed it tasted like vanilla, and then it became a form of creating vanilla flavoring that was cheaper than vanilla. So I'm not suggesting that all your vanilla flavoring is like that now. I think it's rare these days, but what I want to suggest to you is that when you see flavorings, artificial flavorings, natural flavorings, I want you to stay away. You should be eating things because they taste the way they were meant to taste. So my second tip for you today is avoid chemicals.
All of you who go to Starbucks every morning and order a vanilla latte, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, I think from now on when you walk in, you should go, I'll have a vanilla beaver butt latte.
A beaver-free. A beaver-free latte. But actually, that's real. It's called castorium. You can look it up. They stopped the practice a couple of decades ago. But for the longest time, raspberry, strawberry, vanilla was from a yellowish secretion from a beaver's anal glands.
Yep. And as much as it's been stopped in widespread production, it's still available to purchase.
It still is available.
Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. Avoid chemicals.
So with that segue on beavers, let's go on to number 3.
All right, number 3. Number three is a very important thing. And this is something that we've been talking about for a long time. And I think you're going to start to see this popping up because the more work we've done in this area, the more people are starting to talk this way. I want you to hear this. We evolved in a very long process. We're talking about many hundreds of thousands of years, arguably millions of years. And during those years that we evolved, we were subjected to seasons over which we had no control. What that meant was that at certain times of year, certain foods were available. And at other times of year, other foods were available. And then yet at other times of year, other foods were available. So what we need to recognize is a couple of things. One is we evolved to eat in seasons. So let me give you an example of what this means. It means that the concept of a recommended daily allowance, or in the US, what is commonly referred to as the RDA, right? And many countries have this idea of a recommended daily allowance of certain nutrients that you're supposed to have. The concept of an RDA is complete rubbish. It is total and complete rubbish. Nature would never have provided this one day where, look, it's all right there. Everything you need is just available that one day. That's not how it worked. At one time of year, this was available. At another time of year, this was available. In fact, there are certain things that our body can hold on to for months after having a lot of it in one season. And so it's actually quite important that our bodies go through these seasons. Even people who are now, doing like green juices and green smoothies and stuff like that, one of the things that we're really clear about is that you should not have the exact same ingredients in your smoothie through the whole year. You should be cycling the plants through there so that you're having a more seasonal experience of your food. So that's the first thing about seasonality, is that you are supposed to be getting a spread of nutrients over the course of an annual seasonal rotation. So that means that there's a season where maybe you're getting a lot more protein, and a season where you're getting a lot more sugar, and a season where you're getting a lot more fat. So by living in those seasons, you're giving your body the very thing that it evolved for, and that's going to allow you to have a more optimal health experience. But then the other thing about this that's really fascinating, and this is really important, it flies in the face of everything that's been taught to us about diet for the last 50 years. Your weight and your experience of energy has basically nothing to do with calorie counting. It has nothing to do with that. That's not how it works. You don't eat fat to get fat. You don't eat fat to get fat. It does not work that way. You don't eat excessive numbers of calories in order to get fat. You don't cut all the calories out in order to lose weight. It doesn't work that way. You see, each of the seasons communicates a message to the body. So when we start eating a certain type of food, think about it like this. Chipmunks and squirrels, right? What do? Winter's coming, there's a chill in the air, and they start thinking, it's time to store nutrition, right? So they do a couple of things. One is their metabolism changes and they start fattening up. So look at the chipmunks and squirrels when you get into the fall. They start looking bigger and bigger. They're bigger for two reasons. One is they're putting on more subcutaneous fat, and because their fur is growing a winter coat, right? So they're getting ready for winter. Now, how do they do that? How do they know? Do they have an app? They look at their iWatch and go, oh, look, it's winter's coming. Or are they watching Game of Thrones? Winter's coming? No. They get it because as they start eating different things and as the conditions around them change, their body, their instincts kick in and start preparing for winter. We're the same way. What happens is that what happened was, for our ancestors, as the trees started sprouting the different fruits and so on, we would go and eat it, and our body would know from that. Our pancreas would kick in and start producing all kinds of insulin. It would stop producing glucagon because our pancreas can't do both at the same time, apparently. And at that moment, the body would go, oh, winter's coming. And it's really important to understand that humans, like our number one cause of death forever has been starvation. That's the biggest reason that our ancestors died, right? So our bodies have evolved powerful cravings, instincts, and physiology to prevent starvation at all costs in a time when food was unbelievably rare. So here you are moving into this winter season, and the body calls out and says, oh my God, winter's coming. We need to store hydration because winter, from our evolutionary legacy, meant long, dry, hot drought times. And so we got to store hydration, and we got to store calories. We got to store nutrition. And so what do we start doing? We start putting on fat. We have to, because food is about to become extremely scarce, because water is about to become extremely scarce. And so by eating those foods, we're telling ourselves that winter is coming. The challenge is, because the food industry only cares about profitability, almost everything we eat today sends a winter is coming signal. Now, some people have naturally gifted very fast metabolisms, and it doesn't hurt them as badly. They suffer in other ways we can talk about another time. But many, many people, most people in fact, find that they gain about 3 pounds a year every year of their lives. and they
Wow.
become obese. And obesity is 7 times more dangerous than smoking. And it's all because our instincts and our inclination were, when we're eating sugar, winter is coming. We need to store fat. Now, the good news about this is that there's another season. And that season triggers safety. It tells the body, it's over. The winter's over. There's an abundance of food around. And in the weirdest twist of irony, when you are eating the right things in the right massive quantities, when you're eating a phenomenal amount of the right foods, you can lose a huge amount of weight because you're eating the right foods. You might even feel like, I'm overeating right now, but you'll still lose weight. But that's because what we've misunderstood for years is we thought that the calories in, calories out method of weight loss was a pure accounting issue. And what we didn't take into account is that the food we eat gives us messages. There's some food we eat that gives us a message, winter's coming, lose weight. And there's some food that we can eat that gives us a message that says, you survived the winter and it's time for you to release that weight. And let me just give you one more thing. And I know not everybody that's watching this is interested in weight loss, but here's the deal. Weight loss programs are generally a bad idea because weight loss is not a thing. Health is a thing. Health is a thing and weight loss is a byproduct of health. And so when I'm talking about weight loss, what I'm really talking about is a return to functional health. And so there's a season where your body says, I can return to a functional weight. Why would I want to carry this extra weight around? It takes a lot of energy. I'm not as safe when I'm carrying this weight, so I'd like to release it. That's the good news. For those people who are carrying extra weight, your body actually doesn't want it. But your instincts kind of do because they're a little confused about what season is coming next. So that's my next principle for you, is recognize that we evolved with seasonal food changes. And so we now need to take advantage of that. And we need to create in our lives a way of having a more seasonal eating cycle. The fourth key principle I want to share with you is, I think, so obvious, but I want to share it anyway. And I say it's so obvious because on some level you probably totally know this already, and most people are not practicing it. And it's really this simple. A lot of times we think that our health is going to be improved by cutting out, cut out these 7 dangerous foods and all that kind of stuff, right? Which, there's some validity. There are foods that people probably should be cutting out. But let's just play a little experiment here, because the fourth principle I want to share with you is that your health is far more determined by getting enough of the good stuff than it is by eliminating the bad. Now let me offer you a sort of form of proof of this. Now, let's imagine that we take a person and we put them on the perfect diet, right? They eat only exactly what they're supposed to eat. In fact, it's perfect. They don't have any toxins. There's nothing wrong. Nothing bad is getting in. They're eating exactly what they should be eating and nothing that they shouldn't, okay? It's perfect, so they're healthy. But what would happen if we came along with some kind of strange process and we removed vitamin C from their food, right? So now they're eating everything that they should be eating perfectly, and they're getting no poisons, no toxins, no waste, nothing bad in at all, but we've removed the vitamin C. What's going to happen? They're going to get skin sores, scurvy, and over time they're going to die because they didn't get their basic nutritional needs met. So I want to put something to you that might push a few buttons here for some people, but here's what I want to suggest. That for most of human history, starvation has been the #1 cause of death for humans, and I would put to you that it still is. Because what's happening now is people are massively overfed. They're eating phenomenal amounts of calories beyond what they would ever need, and yet they are still malnourished. They're still malnourished. In other words, they've got lots of stored calories on their body, but they also have a lot of toxicity, and they have a lot of acidity, and they have a lot of pain, and they have a lot of difficulty in movement, and lack of flexibility, and difficulty sleeping, and foggy thinking. And they don't know it. They don't know it. And it's not because they're starving, because on a visual basis, they're clearly not starving. They're clearly many times overweight, and yet they are actually starving, which is why many of those people will very much struggle ever to try to lose any weight, because the minute they try to calorie restrict, the minute they try to eat less food, their body's going to go, what the hell are you thinking? I'm already starving here. Starving of nutrients, not of calories. And so my fourth principle for you for today is you must get enough of the good stuff even before you consider getting rid of the bad stuff. The fifth principle I want to share with you is to begin to understand what makes you hungry. Now, what I mean is this, that in Wilfit, we work with the 6 core hungers that people have, the 6 core hungers. So for example, if the vast majority of people are nutritionally starving right now, then they're going to be experiencing one of the major hungers, and they're going to be experiencing it on a regular basis. It's called nutritional hunger. This is where your body is missing vital nutrients, and it's saying, go and eat. Now, the challenge is, because we live seasonally and we had such a variety of different foods around us, we very rarely our body can't really go and say, go and eat that plant, go and eat that thing. It doesn't give us a specific message like that. And to the degree it does, it's because somebody marketed it to us, right? Generally what happens is when the body is low on nutrients, at best it might ask for a food group, and often all it'll do is say, go and eat. So if we have nutritional hunger, then we will want to eat. And this is why somebody can eat a large meal with some beautiful white steaming bread and some pasta and tomato sauce, and then full, they think, you know what? I'd still like to have some dessert. Because the meal they just ate was difficult for their digestion. And so as a consequence, their body says, oh, I'm still nutritionally hungry. So even though their stomach might be full, their nutrient level is not. And so their body sends out this message, says, you better keep eating or you're going to starve. You better keep eating or you're going to starve. So again, going back to the fourth principle, one of the most important issues is getting enough of the good stuff so that you can mute nutritional hunger. Because you can imagine, it's a lot harder to walk past a food that you wish you could walk past if you have nutritional hunger in your core of your being. And so getting enough of the good stuff can help address nutritional hunger. This is a very key principle. Now, the other hungers, they're the same. If we learn these hungers and then figure out how to neutralize them, we change everything. Like, here's a funny one, thirst. Thirst is actually a hunger, but I'm not talking about thirst for liquids. What I mean is that when your body has a thirst for liquids, here's what's really going on. You see, for most of our history, we didn't have pottery. We didn't have, bottles, right? We didn't have a faucet we could just turn on. Water was a rarity. We had to go find it. And so a lot of the water that we ingested came from water-based foods, fruits and vegetables and plants that we ate. So what that meant was when we began to feel a little dehydrated, our body would say, eat something. You need some water. So thirst, how do you mitigate that? Well, you stay hydrated. And if you stay hydrated, then that hunger can't act upon you.
So this was a really key idea for me when Eric explained the concept of thirst as a hunger. So every 5 p.m. before Wilfit, every 5 p.m. in my office, I would snack. And I would have one of those energy bars or, and I thought that was healthy. I thought that was okay. But what I realized was I wasn't hungry, I was thirsty. Now I just replace that with a cup of tea, no calories, or water, and it goes away. Now that was one of the key things I got from you through Wilfit that really helped me change my behavior that was not conducive to my health.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Let's go on to the third hunger.
The third hunger is really fascinating, and it's called variety. And how it manifests today, you can watch it happening today. You're out with a bunch of friends, and they go, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? And somebody goes, hey, let's go for sushi. And the other one's go, I had sushi yesterday, right? That's because at our core, we actually desire nutritional variety, and that's to make sure that we meet our very big spectrum of nutritional requirements. If you take it back into nature, it would kind of work like this. Certain foods would have just been plentiful around at times. Like certain plant foods would have just been absolutely plentiful, just, there. And so we maybe could get lazy, right? We get lazy. And, for those people who are meat eaters, for example, well, if there's a ton of fruit and vegetable on the ground, maybe you don't, why would you go risk your life hunting if there's food everywhere? But then what happens is after eating that one food for so long, eventually the body goes, I need a little variety. And that variety motivates us to go and seek out other foods. Of course, the challenge we have today is there is an abundance of variety around us all the time, where variety might have been something that we worked on a monthly basis, where we might be eating a one sort of basic meal or one sort of spread of foods over the space of weeks or months as the seasons were changing. Then it would change to another season. But now it's like I'll have variety each meal. Right? I'll have variety each meal. And incidentally, that causes a different kind of stress, and that is that your body has to become, it has to deal with digesting completely different types of foods every single time you put them in, which has a really interesting impact on your gut biome. So making sure that you understand that you have a craving for variety, and one of the ways you can handle this is by learning how to prepare healthy foods in a variety of different ways. Because in a weird way, bok choy, for example. I love bok choy. So you have bok choy, but there's about 5 different ways that you could have bok choy. And then you can create some variety with healthy foods instead of leaning on junk foods for your variety. The next hunger is one that really causes issues for a lot of people, and it's called low blood sugar hunger. Basically, it's that feeling you get when your blood sugar drops to a point that your body's not happy. What you have to remember is your brain only has one type of fuel. There's only one thing that your brain eats, and that's glucose, right? That's the only thing. And when your blood sugar starts to drop down, the brain starts to go into a panic, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, the sugar sources are low, and that could end up being a really serious problem, i.e. starvation, right? And so when we get low blood sugar, we can feel energy dips, and also our cravings can be amplified. One of the things we often say in Wildfit is the hungrier you let yourself get, the more flexible you will become about your food rules, right? And you know how it is, people go, I'm not eating that anymore, and I'm not eating that anymore, but then something happens and they get hungry enough where they make an exception, right? Well, one of the things that will often drive that is low blood sugar hunger. And so a key principle in helping somebody overcome this is to show them how to switch their metabolism to be primarily fat burning rather than sugar burning. Sugar burning is a metabolism system that was designed for stressful circumstances, for emergency response. And the challenge is that in our lives today, we're dealing with stress so often. Stress in the old days was different. You walk around the corner, you see a lion. It's very stressful, right? But then you walk away, the lion's done. The stress is gone, right? The lion's gone, the stress is gone. You're not on a therapy couch for the next 7 years talking about how that lion is still stressing you out, right? Our lives are very different now today. And so because of that, we are very often in this sugar burning mode. And so as a consequence, when we don't eat any dietary sugar, our blood sugar crashes, we feel horrible, our food rules become more, flexible, and many of us will find that we end up grumpy and nasty and that kind of stuff, mood swings. So it's really important to begin to work toward a more fat burning metabolism so that low blood sugar isn't a challenge for you. The next one I want to share with you is maybe the most important of them all, and that is emotional hunger. A huge amount of the food decisions that people make are really a desire to change the way they feel, not a desire specifically for food. And so I want to just suggest to you this one thing, just one little exercise about this. I am sure there are some foods that you think that maybe you could eat a little less of, or maybe there's even some foods where you'd really rather you didn't eat them at all. I don't know. What I'm going to ask you to think about is this. The next time you make a decision to eat that food, and I want you to eat it, don't stop. Really don't. Not until you're ready. But I want you to just think about what is the emotion that you're experiencing when you want to eat that food? And then what is the emotion that you believe eating that food will give you? And then how do you think that food's really going to make you feel? Understanding emotional hunger is really, really important. And there's a lot of things you can do to help it. But one of them is that you seek other ways of satisfying your emotional voids rather than food. So if you are feeling a little disconnected, a lot of people turn to chocolate when they're feeling disconnected. I'm not going to ask you to give up chocolate. I'm just saying to you that maybe it would be useful that the next time you're having that craving for connection, that what you do is you pick up the phone and call somebody you love and talk to them for half an hour, and maybe the craving goes away. And that leads us into the 6th of the human hungers, and that is empty stomach hunger. And this is an illusion. It's actually not a genuine hunger. What it is your stomach being empty is a feeling. It's not a form of hunger, it's a feeling. Your body knows that your stomach is empty. It is entirely possible for somebody who is extremely nutrient rich, that eats a very balanced diet, to have a completely empty stomach and not feel hunger, right? The challenge we have today is that most of us feel hungry most of the time, except when we are so full that we can't imagine eating more food. And as soon as we don't feel so full anymore, we probably could eat again. And so the challenge for us is that our stomachs, when they're empty, got anchored to hunger. In other words, because our stomachs were empty while we felt hunger, then we started to link this up, that, oh, my stomach is empty, therefore I'm hungry. All right, maybe this is a little bit complicated, but what I'm trying to suggest is this. Your stomach is normally about this size. But because we live traditionally, historically, in a feast and famine kind of a world, where one day everything was in season and we could eat abundant levels of fruit, one day maybe our ancestors killed a mammoth and they had meat for days and their stomach could stretch out to handle all that food. But then the stomach would shrink back down when all that food was gone again. But the problem is most of us live in a large meal-based world, right? Where we eat a huge family meal and we stretch our stomachs out every day. And so now we have this empty stomach feeling magnified by an artificially large stomach and amplified by our other hungers. And so there's some really important things that we can do. And that one is really simple. Notice the difference between your stomach being hungry, your stomach being empty, and you being hungry, because it's not the same thing. The core thing I'm trying to say to you is there are a variety of different reasons that you eat. And the more in touch and conscious you can become about those reasons, the more conscious you can become about your decisions.
So it's absolutely nuts how ill-educated we are about our own bodies and what we have to put in our bodies. But the thing is, once you grasp it, it's really easy. So check out this story. This is Garrett Davies. So Garrett is one of the guys who runs the technology division of Mindvalley, and he's a giant of a man. He's from Scotland, and he's about 6'5", and I don't even want to know how much he weighs, because he's probably like twice my body size. But Garrett is in his mid-30s, and he's a father, he has a son. But what's interesting is, he had tried throughout his life to just be normal sized, and he just gave up. He just accepted the fact that he had to have clothes specially made for him. Yeah. Now look at what happened on Wilfit. Just check out these pictures. Garrett was so influenced by Wilfit, he lost so much weight that he said he can now go to a regular store. He was so proud of the fact that he could go to Uniqlo and Zara and buy normal people clothes. Still large, but normal people clothes. What I love about Eric's approach is this. Number one, it's based on community. Guys, you don't start this on your own. When you start Wilfit, you're in a community. On our Quest app, which is what powers the Mindvalley Wilfit program, there's a community of people directly in touch. And the community from our last batch is still active, and it's incredible to see how people are sharing stories, sharing videos. Garrett, my technology leader, whom I told you about, he was so inspired by Wilfit, he started producing videos on YouTube on how to make healthy foods to replace, common foods we love that are traditionally unhealthy. So his last video was on his own recipe for healthy mayo. So it's amazing how people are being inspired and people are holding each other accountable. The community is so tight, and it's so amazing to see how people are as a community going through this transformation. Number two, most programs, and even if you watch shows like The Biggest Loser, people pile that weight back on. It is so ineffective. What makes Wilfit effective is that your brain, your behaviors are being rewired. So I never liked veggies. Now I cannot consume enough veggies. I just freaking love veggies. I used to love dessert. Now I would eat a little bit of dessert, but now there is zero craving for dessert. I am a Starbucks guy. I started Mindvalley in a Starbucks. And you know what? When I am in a Starbucks, I would order a venti mocha or a venti cappuccino filled with milk, filled with sugar. Now the only way I take my coffee is black. And I enjoy it. I don't even miss those other forms of coffee. In fact, they leave a foul taste in my mouth. It's amazing how your taste buds get adapted to certain types of food. But you can switch this, and it takes 3 days. For me to go from like unhealthy coffee to healthy coffee, it took 3 days. It was painful for those first 3 days, but now I wouldn't have it any other way, and I've cut back maybe 100, 200 calories a day from my diet because I take that much coffee. Third, and this is a big one, Wilfit has an interesting element of mystery to it. Every week, Eric is going to give you a different assignment, and you won't know what's coming up the next week. He will give you a clue on Friday, and on Monday, you have to activate that particular assignment. And there's a beautiful psychology of this. So I remember one particular week where I had to remove a foodstuff I really craved. So Eric tells me about that on Friday. So I go shopping for the alternatives. And Saturday and Sunday, I'm allowed to eat as much of that food as I want. We don't recommend that, but I did. I just filled myself with that food stuff. Funny thing is, when Monday came, I felt so sick from how much I was eating on Saturday and Sunday, I stopped craving it. And I've not gone back to that food item, even though I've been eating it for 3 decades, because it was bad for me. Now, I can't share the food item because it spoils the element of mystery. Wilfit works because you don't know what you're going to be assigned to do next. The psychology for this is so beautiful. Eric, many of you may not know, but Eric speaks on stage with Tony Robbins. He is not just an expert in nutrition and food, but he's also a remarkable trainer of the human mind. And that's why Wilfit is so different from traditional diets. In fact, I wouldn't even call it a diet at all. Now, the final thing is, and this was something I absolutely love, the engine switch.
Yeah.
So, okay, your body is carrying around with you, what, 250,000 calories in stored fat?
Let's call it 100,000 calories.
100,000 calories in
stored
fat.
ready to
right.
go.
Built on, ready to go. Now, your body burns those calories. It's a sugar burning engine. Wilfit gets you, in Eric's words, to flip the switch to become a fat burning engine. Now, the switch doesn't flip immediately. It happens around week 8 or week 9, but when it flips, and you start melting. So here's the thing, right? Let me put this picture back on. This is a 9-week difference, April 4th to June 23rd. Okay, now, keep in mind, I started Wilfit March 15, right? So from March 15 to April 4, there were no changes in my body. In fact, until May, there was no changes. All the changes occurred around week 9 for me.
Yeah.
And when those changes occurred in week 9, I was losing 1 kilogram a week. In week 9, 10, 11, 12, I lost a kilogram each. But here's the crazy thing. When that switch flips, something happens to your body, and even if you put weight back on, it's easy to get that switch to flip back again.
Yeah.
Now, the question is it tough? Well, I can tell you this. In my transformation photo, what I did not share is that you'll notice that photo is April 4th to June 23rd. Those of you who know Mindvalley know that in May, around May 20 to May 29, we have our big festival, A-Fest. That particular month, it happened in Greece. So there I was in Greece, eating pita bread, eating feta cheese, eating all of these things. You would so fail me as a student because I got off the Wilfit diet. But I came back from A-Fest and I was sure, because I was also drinking, alcohol, like Greek wine, every single night. But I was so sure that I would have messed up my diet and that my body would have swelled back to its prior size. Turned out when I got back from A-Fest, and I do not recommend this, but I had continued to maintain my weight and I continued to lose weight. Now again, I do not recommend that. I'm simply showing that I cheated a bit, but I still got dramatic results. And I wonder where I would be if I had not cheated completely. So the whole concept of willpower, of cheat days, you will find that it's nonsense. You do not need that. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that completely.
Wilfit operates in a completely different paradigm of dieting, and that's why I was so excited to bring this to our Mindvalley audience, because I've seen this work on myself, on my people I care about, on my mom, and I cannot wait to see how this works for you. Now, if you want to sign up for Wilfit, all the information is directly below. I want you to know that the traditional program is a very hands-on coaching program. Prices range from $1,000 to $5,000, depending on the level of coaching that you get. Everything we do at Mindvalley, we have economies of scale because we have so many millions of subscribers that you actually get an incredible price. And not only do you get a Mindvalley discount, but as a thank you for joining us in this masterclass, for investing all of this time learning about your health, we will give you a special unlock price to enroll at an even further discount. So we are doubling up on the discounts on this page. Do not close this page because that only activates after you've watched the webinar. It's just our way of saying thank you. You've spent all of this time with us. We want to reward you as an ardent learner. So scroll down below to see all the information about Wilfit and how you can enroll. You'll see the starting date for when the Wilfit quest begins. This is when everyone is going to get into the quest. And before the date begins, you'll already be getting warm-up content so you know what to shop for, how to prepare, how to get in the right state of mind. And then when the Wilfit challenge starts, it is so much fun. It's so exciting. And honestly, those 90 days, for most of you, it's going to be so much easier than you expect. Oh, and one more thing. Many different health and diet programs are based on a business model of selling you supplements. So after you take the program, they want you to then pay them $20, $30 a month to get these supplements delivered to you. Nothing wrong with that, but I question, are these supplements really effective, or is that just a really effective business model? Now, you got an email today so firstly, at no point in Wilfit are we going to try to waste your time and sell you supplements. That is not the type of business model we have. We want to give you changes that will last your lifetime at the end of this 90 days. There's nothing more you need to do after that other than live your life and live by your new habits and rules for yourself?
Yeah, the supplements thing is really fascinating. We're very clear. The word supplement, the clue is right in the word. Supplement means in addition to. It doesn't mean in replacement of. And unfortunately, most supplements are being sold on the idea, well, you're not going to eat enough vegetables, so you should have your supplements or whatever. And so I was telling Vishen about this morning, maybe about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I got an email from a client, and she says, I've never felt better in my life, and I have stopped buying all the supplements. And she stopped them by months, and she was spending $3,200 a year on supplements. And of course, by turning her health around, by getting a really good natural nutrition base, by doing the things that her body really wanted to do, she didn't need those supplements. And at first it was just an experiment. She just like, okay, I'll stop taking them and see how I feel. And what she found was she felt really, really good. And what she realized is that in her case, and this is true sadly of many supplements, is that the supplements were just giving her expensive urine. They weren't really doing anything for her. Once she got her nutrition right, that was the answer.
And I want to be clear, there are many supplement companies out there that are phenomenal. I do take supplements.
Yeah.
All we wanted to stress is that Wilfit is not about getting you to subscribe for some supplement program. There is nothing else you need to do after you enroll in Wilfit. So at this point, if you're still in the fence on Wilfit, I want to show you something really powerful. Check out these stories and pictures.
Hi, I'm Sherry Clark. I first did Wilfit in the first quarter of 2015, and between the first quarter, I did it twice in a row, dropped 40 pounds in the first session and 20 in the second, and have been able to successfully keep it off ever since. Now, I've put on little bits. I've put on enough that I've said, get yourself back in check, girl, and go back on the program. But it comes right back off. It drops right back off. So I told Eric I should get credit for losing about 75 pounds, but 60 pounds gone, not having come back at all.
Hello, my name is Marie Diamond. I'm a global transformational teacher, speaker, and author, and I'm also known as a Feng Shui master in The Secret. I'm very excited that I can share with you how Wilfit has changed my life. First of all, I learned a lot of information about food and also my psychology about food and how it impacted me. But I also lost about 8 kilos, that's about 16 pounds of weight. But the most important thing for me was that I had, I really let go of some of my allergies.
I'm Anita Sanchez, owner of Sanchez Tennis & Associates. I work with global corporations in helping bring their people together across differences. And I'm also author of the book, The 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. And I cannot say enough about the Wilfit program. First and foremost is I released weight, 19 pounds, and have kept it off, and 21.5 inches. So that's enough of a success story. But I feel like there's even more than that, if you can believe it, more than that. And that is, I began making the connections with Eric's help, with his process, to get to understand. I understood for myself why I was eating. What was I trying to fulfill? Different emotions that would come up. And I was able to deconstruct that and really understand what was happening with me. So it not only affected my health and feeling better and healthier in terms of my organs and just my whole functioning, but for my mind and my spirit of being able to be free to understand what it means to be liberated when you have an addiction to certain foods. And it all comes from emotions and things that I didn't understand, hooked to different patterns from my past.
Now I want you to know that at Mindvalley, we want to give you the opportunity to try out any of our programs, and if you don't feel this absolutely meets your expectations, you can get a full unconditional refund. So you do not even have to make up your mind right now. You can try this out and get a full refund if this isn't for you. So our customer support team has been awarded by Nice Reply Best Customer Support Team in Asia. It is, we are known as a role model company for customer support. One email to support@mindvalley.com, instant refund. But I do want to stress that don't look at weight loss as the measure, because the weight loss will come pretty much week 8 or week 9 for the vast majority of people. For me, it was week 9, because that's when the engine switches. But what you want to look at it is Eric's style of teaching, the value of the community, the quality of what we've put together. You know, that's for you to check out. But don't go into this expecting weight loss in 30 days. It happens in week 8 or week 9. But still, your purchase, your investment in Wilfit, like any other Mindvalley program, is totally protected. See, it's not just about feeling and looking better. I calculated how much I lost around 4 kilograms, how much my 4 kilograms looked, and it was the weight of my backpack. So I'm walking around now without that backpack on my back, and it changes things. So for example, many of you who read my book know that I talk about how I do push-ups every morning, right? And for 10 years, I could get to 50, maybe 55 push-ups. I was not able to go beyond 55. In the middle of Wilfit, I hit 64, a new push-up record. Why? Because I was carrying almost a backpack-sized load of fat on my body without knowing it. And so Wilfit wasn't just about me looking and feeling better, about me being able to wear like great t-shirts and, you know, losing all of my old shirts and my baggy pants. It was about so much more energy to do the things I want to do in life. What is that reason for you? It's really important that you understand and you ask yourself, what matters to you? For some people, they do this because when they are 80, they want to be able to play ball with their grandkids and not be tired.
Yeah.
So for others, it may just be so you live longer. I want to be around, not just for my kids, but my grandkids. I lost a friend. He was 50. He passed away in his sleep due to a heart attack because of his obesity, right? I don't want that happening to me. 50 for me is 9 years from now. I don't want that happening to anybody I know. And you certainly don't want that happening to you, especially when you have loved ones and kids around. So it is so important, folks, that you take these ideas seriously. When you understand your why, your big why for why getting healthy and losing weight is important, and when you understand that it's so much easier when you learn the right education, you are going to be so motivated for this Wilfit program, and results are going to come to you so effortlessly.
If I can add one thing, you know, doctors will often sit with a patient who has serious health problems. You know, with something like cancer, they may say, well, you know, you have a 30% chance of survival and you're not going to make it past 5 years. And with severe chest congestion, they might say something different. They might say, well, we don't know when it's going to happen. It could happen in 10 minutes or it could happen in 10 years. But people are having these conversations with their doctors on a absolutely regular basis. And in essence, what's happening is the doctor is saying, you need to make a change right now or you're going to die. And the challenge is that the vast majority of people who have that conversation with their doctor, they don't make that change and they die. The reason that they don't make that change and then die is because they didn't have a community around them to support the change. They didn't have a structure to support the change. And frankly, they were probably confused about food anyway because of the way the food marketing industry entirely works. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that this is not simply about, you know, saying, hey, I just want to make a change. This is about us saying, here is a structure that will have you to a place that 90 days from the point you start, you will have a different relationship with food. It will be different. It will be habitual and different. And that's very different than me having a conversation that says, hey, you need to change or else. It's, you need to change or else, and here's how.
So here's how Wilfit works. Firstly, know this is a coaching program. It is not a course that you download and go in through your own time. It is a coaching program, and you're working with Eric and his team. They are trained coaches who are working with the community, taking you through this transformation. Now, the first week, you are watching a video and showing up for one of these coaching sessions online with a large number of people every day. Then you're watching a couple of videos every day. Then it gets to a point where you're watching maybe a video on Monday and a video on Friday and enacting certain behavioral changes in between. So you do have to invest some time in this, but the way it's designed, and this is what's so beautiful about Wilfit, is it's manageable. It is so absolutely manageable, and as you can tell, Eric is an incredible storyteller, an incredible presenter, so he keeps you hooked. And it was actually really, really, really fun going through this. And the community is so vibrant. But keep in mind, it is a coaching program. But given the results you get, this is probably one of the most incredibly best valued coaching programs you could ever invest in. And if you think the price is too high, ask yourself, what will it cost you to not do this? The average American spends about $3,000 to $3,500 a year just on medicine and healthcare bills, right? Now, imagine when that cost goes away, when you're not wasting so much money fixing things about you because you were getting spoiled in the first place from bad behaviors. This is the move from healthcare to self-care. So thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this whole conversation was an eye-opening adventure for you in terms of simple shifts you can make in your body that are going to dramatically change your health. Seriously, we're here at the TLC conference with all of these incredible experts and authors and famous folks here in Cabo, Mexico. And I've been talking to people, and recently one of the founding members went up to Eric and said, thank you, because everybody here looks so thin.
It was cute.
So it was a really beautiful moment. So the masterclass is officially over. You guys can get on out of here. But for those of you who are scrolling on the page, reading about Wilfit, we're going to stay back and just answer a couple of questions.
Sure, let's do it.
So the first question is, Eric, on Wilfit, do you ever get hungry?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that people can, but they shouldn't. I mean, it's a really key thing that we explain to clients is that they should not be hungry on the program. They should not allow themselves to get hungry. Hungry changes your decision-making process. And so the way the program is constructed is that you should not actually experience hunger. And that'll happen two ways. One is by changing the way you actually eat step by step, but also by helping people get really aware of what the different hungers feel like, and they can get more honest about what hunger is. So no, people should not feel hungry in the way that you know, in a normal diet they have to give up foods and they feel hungry. They will not feel that on this program.
The way Wilfit changes your approach to hunger is really remarkable. Yeah. It's like you have a different relationship with your body. Now, number two, how does it impact your family? Tell us about that. This isn't really a question, but I want you to talk about that because this is so fascinating to see.
It really is interesting. Some of our very best, I mean, at this point we have hundreds of people writing to us saying, oh, my blood sugar's been normalized, I'm no longer type 2, I no longer have my skin problems. I mean, we get emails like that all the time. The funny thing is, though, is we get a lot of them from people who we've never worked with because they were a family member of somebody going through the challenge, right? And so, one of the coolest ones ever I just got was from a woman who did the program, and she's writing about all her results, but then she just drops it in like a little PS, like she doesn't realize how big an impact it's gonna have on me. She goes, PS, my 12-year-old son has lost 25 pounds.
Wow.
It brought me to tears, like 25 pounds at 12? He was gonna lose a foot to diabetes by the time he was 32 years old. You know, like that's and the child had never done the program, but the mom had changed the world inside the family. And so the approach to family is really simple. And it's this way. Lead, don't push. You know, we'll talk a lot about this during the challenge, but lead, don't push. You will be shocked and amazed to find that even people who ridicule, oh, you're changing this, you're doing that, you're trying some new thing, even those people by the end of week 8 or 9 are starting to go, I think I'll have what you're having. Right. And they will begin to change. And we've had some of our absolute best success stories have actually come from coworkers and family members of our clients simply through observation.
It is insane. I have, just after my first Wilfit experience, I had about collectively 20 or so friends and family members sign up for the next Wilfit because of how they saw my body had changed. You are the best proof of this. Now, this is an interesting question, but tell us about how Wilfit actually improves your sex life.
Well, it's a colorful conversation. But if we talk about men for a minute, what happens to a lot of men when they get to our age? I mean, our age. Like, we're not quite as young.
You're still technically older than me.
I am technically older than you, and it probably will stay that way for some time. But the fact is technically at our age, we're supposed to have a belly so that we can't see our own feet. I don't know what you were thinking. But we're supposed to have that, and then what then begins to happen is that our testosterone levels are supposed to then start to drop, and with that, our sex drive begins to go down. Part of what I believe is happening there, and a similar thing happens to women, part of what I believe is happening there is that when we have a dysfunctional diet, our bodies are trying to prevent passing on those bad ideas. So we become less virile, but we also become less fertile. And frankly, it's getting much, much harder for people to conceive now because of these types of things. So we've had repeated reports from clients that here's one of the issues. What we've heard a lot from our clients is that when their spouse does the program and their spouse loses weight or reshapes their body, that they find themselves rekindling the attraction they had for their spouse. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's a really big issue, and that's part of why it happens. But then also, if the body's working well, then everything is going to work well.
Everything's working well.
On a more serious note, when you're healthy, when your body is getting everything that it needs, right? It's amazing how strong the body's capacity is for putting up with junk. If your body's getting what it needs, the immune system works better. The body's flushing systems work better. And your thought process is faster. You think faster, your memory gets better. And so if all that stuff is true, why wouldn't we get more sex drive? Why wouldn't we become more fertile? And that we have countless WildFit babies around the world now where people have told us that they struggle to conceive until they did the program, and boom.
Which is really funny, because Garrett, the guy I told you about who lost all of that weight, his wife mentioned that she almost feels guilty making love to him now because she feels she's cheating on him because the body feels so different. So a side bonus, folks, remember that. Now on that note, I believe it's time to wrap up. You guys know exactly what to do. We will see you in the WildFit program. Thank you so much for joining us. Go forth and eat healthy.
Hi, I'm Bobby D. Porter, and I'm president of Quantum Learning Network. We're all about youth and learning. It's a company I founded 35 years ago. I was so excited to do WildFit because I did it with my husband, and it was something that fit into our lives. Also to do it with friends and to be able to see the other people that were on the calls every week was just so supportive and really motivated me to stay with the program. And first of all, the program made sense to me. It became part of our lifestyle of what we wanted to do. My husband really got into the green drinks, and this is like a year and a half later, he's still getting up in the morning and making us both large green drinks in the morning. And it just changed our habits and how we eat, and it feels so natural now that I don't even think about it. It's just part of the way that we eat. So during the program, I lost about 5 pounds, but it was a really good 5 pounds to lose, and my husband lost nearly 20 pounds during the program, and it didn't feel like we were going on something to lose weight. It just felt like something that we were working on a more healthy way of eating, and it stuck with us. A year and a half it's been, and we still influences the way we eat. So I was very, very happy with the WildFit program.
Hi, I'm Veronica de Andres. I come from Argentina. I'm the author of Confianza Total, which is a best-selling book. And what I would like to share with you is that one thing that can bring you confidence, and that's what I love about WildFit, is to be aware of the things that are good for your health, and also to have the confidence that you can change your habits. I mean, confidence is the main subject of all my work. Throughout 30 years of my life, I've been doing research on the subject of confidence. And what I love about WildFit is that it brings you the confidence to live the life you want to live, to become the owner of your choices in terms of the food you eat, and also to be aware of your habits and a way in which you can change them, which is not so easily found in other offers in the market of well-being and health.
Hello, my name is Ken Honda. I'm a Japanese author and motivational speaker. I've been on WildFit for about a few months, and thanks to Eric and the WildFit, I lost about 20-some pounds, and I talked in front of a few thousand people in Japan, and I was going to lose 20 pounds. And I wasn't really confident that I would lose that much, because I don't know how many times I've been on diet, but every time I just couldn't make it. But this time, I guess I made it enough to look that I have lost 20-some pounds. And my next goal is to keep where I am or lose a little more. And thank you, Eric and the WildFit team. I so enjoyed a few months of doing Zoom group session together. It was a lot of fun, and I came close to all the members that I did. So thanks to losing weight, I made many friends that way. So I strongly recommend that you join Wilfit and start living a healthy life.